Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets their glare.
Hi there, this is Freedom Fighter Net. I'm Don Klein. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, celebrated communist back in the early part of this century, last century actually, was quoted as saying, "In politics, nothing ever happens by accident. If it happens, you can bet it was planned." Well, a lot of people have said that he never said that, but it doesn't matter whether he said it or not. It's definitely a true statement. I've been studying government and its machinations and its behind-the-scenes maneuvering and its manipulations to try to get the people to do what it wanted it to do for 35 years now. 35 years, and I have never failed to see that statement as true. That statement is always true, never failed to be true. Here's an example. On September 11th, 2001, 2 jet airliners were flown into the Twin Towers in New York City. Both the buildings came down in great piles of rubble and so forth. They both came down in their own footprint. Building 7, across Vesey Street from the Twin Towers, not hit by an aircraft, not subject to any burning jet fuel, came down exactly the same way an hour later. No reason for that. That is, no apparent reason for that. Now, a lot of conspiracy theories have been bandying about trying to decide who was involved, claiming it was government conspiracy and a cover-up and all that kind of thing. All for the purpose of justifying something, possibly going to war or something. Well, here's my take on it. It was a false flag. It wasn't necessarily government, but it was a false flag. Regardless of how it was done, regardless of why it was done, regardless of the solid fact that no Islamic idiot with 8 hours of flying instruction in a Cessna 150 or 152 is going to make the kind of 75-degree precision-banked turn that I saw one of those aircraft make before it hit the building. It did that to line up and target the building, and there isn't 100 pilots that could do that in the whole world with a full-sized airliner. He did that at 160 knots. I'm a student pilot. I've been a student pilot most of my life, kept running out of money, so I never got any further than student. But I know for a fact there isn't any pilot on the face of this earth that isn't a full qualified test pilot who could do that. Here are 2 solid conspiracy facts, and you can ask anybody, you can do the experimentation yourself, and you can find this is true. The first one is, burning jet fuel does not burn hot enough to soften structural steel, period. Here's the second fact. A building that has not been fitted with microprocessor controlled demolition charges is not going to come down in its own footprint. If it comes down for any reason at all, it will topple over. It will land on other buildings. It will not burn evenly. It will not soften the structural steel evenly. It will therefore tip over. That isn't what happened here. These buildings came down in their own footprint. There is no doubt whatsoever that was a programmed, software-controlled demolition, intentional demolition. The burning jet fuel had nothing to do with it. Therefore, regardless of how or why it was done, regardless of who knew about it and who didn't, regardless of who designed it, worked it, carried it out, regardless of all that, it was a false flag operation. It was for political purpose. It was probably not our government. I doubt our government even knew about it until it actually happened, or if they did, They didn't say anything for fear of being terminated. The point of all of this is, regardless of what the purpose of the 9/11 was, 3,000 people were murdered for a political purpose that certainly was not in the best interest of our country or anyone else. And now today we have another false flag operation going on. Thousands of people are being shipped by what's called a death train from Central America up to the southern Texas border, and they come across the border of Texas. They're being bussed by our government all over this country. Various people are getting very upset. They got them stopped in Marietta. They got them, they never arrived in Oracle apparently. Everybody is also surprised. Oh, the airheaded liberals and their useful idiots cry. They are escaping drug gang violence in Central America. Their families are sending them to relatives in America so where they can be safe. Oh yeah? Drug gang violence has been going on in Central America for 100 years. Why now? Oh, but it's because they've learned that President Obama will welcome them, the news media explains. Oh yeah? Who told them that? And where do these poverty-stricken families from whence these children come, where do they get the $7,000 to $25,000 it takes to pay a coyote to usher them all the way to the southern Texas border? That's not what's happening, people. I mentioned George Soros a while ago and his financial interest consortiums and so forth, his intermediaries. They're down there in Central America, and they are the ones being paid $7,000 to $25,000 for every kid, or even adults, MS-13 members up to the age 22, that they can get on that death train and get across the border into the United States. And they're being paid by George Soros and his bunch. That's why they're turning around and coming back when they get deported, because they get paid again. The families of these children are getting paid hundreds of dollars. They're being paid a pittance, probably less than $100. They're being paid a pittance, but it's more money than they've seen in a year. So they're willingly allowing their children to go on this deal. And their children are going for it. Their children are sick and tired of the poverty. They expect paradise here in America. And they think they've been lied to. They think they'll be welcomed, but they're not. They're getting it from George Soros and his bunch. He's the same guy who bought and paid for Obama's election into the White House. Not only the first time, but the second time. He's the guy who on television talk shows said that you don't need to worry about whether Obama's going to win or not. We own the voting machines in Ohio. This is the guy who's got so much money. It's incredible. He's got backers that are more powerful than he is. He's got backers that never show themselves in public. If they pull out a cigarette lighter and light a cigarette or a cigar with it, the stock rating of that cigarette lighter company goes up 30 points. These are extremely powerful people. Why is all this happening? Well, it's for the same reason that Obama is firing the perfectly qualified and experienced military commanders right and left. He's eviscerating our military, at least our leadership of our military, because he expects there to be one heck of a blow-up in this country in the very near future, and he doesn't want the military to be able to do much about it. Why is he doing that? For the same reason that the only thing frustrating Obama, out of all of his foreign policy failures and all the other failures of his administration, the only thing that's frustrating him is his inability to deprive the American people from their right to keep and bear arms. He wants us disarmed. That's the thing that has stopped these internationalist backers every time they've tried this crap for the last 30 or 40 years. It's what stopped. This was supposed to happen during Clinton's watch, and they got ahead of it. They pulled out this Gun Control Act of 1968, and the number of firearms in private hands doubled before it even went into effect. So they didn't get anywhere with that. That set them back a long ways. They had to come up with a Manchurian candidate like Obama. An enemy agent is what he is, in order to make this thing happen. And it's going to happen very shortly, probably in November, along about the November elections. Why is he doing all this? What is the objective? They want to destroy, as I said earlier, the only nation on the face of the earth that has been founded on principles of liberty, where government has no authority over the people without due process of law. The reason they're doing this invasion of illegals is because they want America to become a refugee camp. This is part of the plan. They want America to become a refugee camp. They want these kids coming across the border to be designated under international law as refugees, because by doing that, that gives the UN the authority to come in with UN troops onto U.S. soil and make sure that these poor, desperate refugees are treated properly. UN troops on U.S. soil at the same time the American people go ballistic over the fact that they're losing everything to people that weren't invited here. There you have the end game. UN troops on U.S. soil, Obama in charge, the election gets knocked into a cocked hat, and Obama gets to stand up there and say, well, I got to stay in office in order to handle the emergency. The first nation in 25 centuries to make the sovereign citizen superior to the government functionary. And Obama wants to destroy that. And the liberals in our country who are trying to ban guns want to destroy that. That's their end game. Some of them don't realize it. Most of them are just useful idiots. But a lot of them are narcissists. And they revel in causing pain and suffering to other people. Their brains are wired wrong. That's what they do. You get angry at them and they love it. You get happy and they hate it. They can't stand you being happy. So, that's the whole end game. U.S. troops on American soil. UN troops on American soil. And the only way to stop that when it happens is to send them home in a box. And then arrest and try for treason every government functionary that had any part in it. And Obama should be tried in a military tribunal as an enemy combatant. He is supposedly commander-in-chief after all. A military tribunal is perfectly appropriate. See you next time.